I'd like to talk to you about the infinitely variable casting arc. In the good old days they talked about from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, but the casting arc we should use should actually match the amount of bend that is in the rod. Now the casting arc is the angle through which we move the rod. So it might be from here to here, from here to here, or even from here to here. The size of the casting arc that we use is determined by how much the rod bends. Now, there's a few different things that affect how much a rod bends: what it's made from, the shape of its taper, how much line we have out the end of the rod, the weight of that line, and how fast we're actually moving that line. What we're looking for to make an effective cast is to have the tip of the rod move in a straight line, like so. Now we need to be able to vary our casting arc in order to keep the tip of the rod moving in a straight line. I've got 3 rods set up here with completely different lines and completely mismatched lines. I also have equal amounts of line out with each rod. Now the first rod I'm going to pick up is a 6-weight rod with a 6-weight line on it, and I'm going to throw what would be considered a reasonable loop, and I want you to note the size of the arc that I use with this particular rod and this particular line. It's probably close to 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So that's a 6-weight rod with a 6-weight line. The next rod I'm going to pick up is a Sage 12-weight, but it has a 5-weight line on it. Now because the rod is going to bend very little, I can get away with a much tighter casting arc and a much tighter loop, like so. You can see the rod is bending very little. I can get by with a very, very tight casting arc and actually throw incredibly tight loops with a rod that bends very, very little. Fish it quite conventionally, no problems. Then we go to the old butter stick, 5-weight fiberglass rod loaded with a 10-weight line, which means it's going to bend enormously during the casting stroke. And in order to keep that tip of the rod traveling in a straight line path, I'm going to have to use a very wide casting stroke. This is the same amount of line as the other 2 rods. Let me tell you, you have to concentrate with this setup. An enormous amount of bend in it. And in order to keep the tip of the rod traveling in a straight line, I have to accelerate it very smoothly, but I have to use a very, very wide arc. Because this rod is bending so much, the straight line path is not going very far above my head. So there we go, the infinitely variable casting arc, and it's determined by how much the rod bends.